My name's Caroline. I'm 32 years old, from Ohio, and, well, I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I said something incredibly stupid, like spectacularly dumb, and now my husband, Ryan, who's 36, has packed his bags. He walked out, and I have no idea if he's coming back. It all started with dinner. Of all things, dinner. Ryan came home from work, exhausted as usual. He works these ridiculously long hours at a finance firm, bringing in enough that I don't have to work. Some might call me a housewife, but I've never liked that label. I'm not the domestic goddess type. I'm more into fashion, makeup, and keeping up with trends. You know, the little things that make life fun. That night, I didn't cook. I'd had a full day of scrolling through TikTok and binge-watching a true crime series. By the time dinner rolled around, I thought, why not just order in? We can afford it. But when Ryan walked in and saw the untouched kitchen, I could see the disappointment and frustration written all over his face. He started with, "You've been home all day. The least you could do is cook dinner." Then came the kicker, a comment about how I don't contribute financially. That one stung. Sure, I'm not scrubbing floors, but I keep the house decent. Plus, I look good for him. Isn't that what guys want? An attractive, put-together wife. And then I snapped. Out of nowhere, I blurted, maybe if he made as much money as Mark, I wouldn't have to worry about cooking. We could just eat out more. Mark. My ex. Yeah, I said that. The second it left my mouth, Ryan's face drained of all color. He didn't yell, he just got quiet. Really quiet. And honestly, that scared me more. He stood there processing before turning and walking out. I didn't follow him. I thought he'd cool off. But later, when I went upstairs, I saw his suitcase half-packed on the bed. I tried to act casual. "You're not seriously leaving over this, are you?" He didn't even look at me. He just muttered, "I can't believe I've wasted years trying to make this marriage work." Panic set in. I told him I didn't mean it, that I was just frustrated, but he wasn't having it. He said, "It's not just this one thing, Caroline. It's everything. You don't appreciate what I do. You spend money like it grows on trees. You don't take anything seriously. And now you're throwing Mark in my face. I'm done." Then he left. I didn't cry, I'm not the weepy type, but I felt sick. I spent hours replaying the fight in my head. By morning, when he still wasn't back, anxiety kicked in. I called. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. Desperate, I sent a voice note. "Ryan, can we just talk? I didn't mean what I said about Mark. You know I don't even like him. Honestly, the only reason I stayed with him was because he had money, and even then, I couldn't stand him. I didn't say it to hurt you. It just came out wrong. Please come home, so we can fix this." Hours later, his response finally came. "Thanks for confirming what I've suspected for a while. You just use people for what they can give you. I guess I'm no different." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I mean, was he entirely wrong? No. But it's not like I went into this marriage thinking, oh, here's someone I can use. I love Ryan. Or, at least I love the life we've built together. I called him again. To my surprise, he picked up. His voice was cold. "What do you want, Caroline?" "What do I want?" "I want to fix this, Ryan. You're making it sound like I don't care about you, and that's not true." Far worse, regret. It wasn't just that Ryan was leaving, it was the realization that I had driven him to it. As much as I wanted to blame him, to label him the bad guy for finding comfort in someone else, deep down, I knew this wasn't just about Emily, or even the argument. It was about years of missteps, of ignoring the cracks in our relationship because it was easier to pretend everything was fine. But now the facade had shattered, and all that was left was the cold, hard truth. I had taken him for granted, and now he was gone. I sat there, replaying his words in my mind. You take and take and take. The accusation burned, but it was hard to deny. I thought back to all the times he'd come home exhausted, looking for a little kindness, only to find my complaints instead. I'd told myself I was justified, that I deserved more, but had I ever stopped to appreciate what I already had? The cafe grew louder as people bustled around me, but it all felt distant, like I was trapped in a bubble of my own making. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run after him and beg him to give me one more chance. But what good would that do? His mind was made up, and for once, I couldn't charm or argue my way out of it. By the time I got home, the house felt emptier than ever. Every room was a reminder of him, his favorite mug on the counter, the sweater he always draped over the couch, the photo of us on the mantel, smiling like we had it all figured out. I poured myself another glass of wine and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I could call him again, leave another voicemail, but what would I even say? That I was sorry? That I'd change? Would it even matter? For the first time in years, I felt completely powerless. Ryan had always been the steady one, the anchor that kept me grounded. And now that he was gone, I realized too late just how much I needed him, not for his money or his stability, but for the way he made me feel like I wasn't alone. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I had relied on him too much, expected him to fill the gaps in my life that I wasn't willing to fill myself. And now, with nothing left to distract me, I had to face the one thing I'd been avoiding for so long: myself. As the hours ticked by, I sat in the silence, letting it wash over me. I didn't know what the future held or how I was supposed to move on, but one thing was clear: this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something else, something I wasn't sure I was ready for: accountability. I didn't want to call it regret, not exactly. The worst part was, I couldn't even blame him. Not really. For years, I'd taken Ryan for granted, pushing his buttons just to see how far I could go. I never thought he'd actually leave. But now that he had, I was lost. A part of me wanted to fight for him, to prove I could change. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was too late. Ryan had made up his mind, and there was no undoing it. I sat there, paralyzed, trying to figure out my next move, but the reality was clear. Ryan was gone, and it was my fault. The divorce was swift, efficient, just like Ryan was with everything in his life. Within a month, the papers were signed, the assets divided, and I was officially on my own. He kept his promise about the house, which felt like a win at first. But now, sitting in this big, empty space, it was nothing more than a monument to everything I'd lost. The first few weeks after he moved out were unbearable. I'd sit in the living room at night, staring at my phone, hoping he'd call or text to say he'd made a mistake. He didn't. Instead, I saw him on social media, looking happier than he had in years. And always there she was, Emily. Emily was everything I wasn't. Sweet, supportive, probably annoyingly low maintenance. The kind of woman who wouldn't roll her eyes when he talked about work or complain about cooking dinner. Seeing them together made my stomach churn, not just out of jealousy, though there was plenty of that. It was the stark realization that Ryan looked free, like he'd shed the weight of our marriage. While he was breathing easier, I was suffocating. The bills piled up faster than I'd expected. Sure, I got spousal support, but it wasn't enough to sustain the life I'd built around Ryan. No more shopping sprees, no more salon appointments, no more dinners out with friends. I even sold some of my designer bags to keep up with the mortgage. The thought of getting a job terrified me. I hadn't worked since my early 20s, and back then, it was just a string of retail jobs I barely cared about. But the hardest part wasn't the money, it was the loneliness. For years, I'd taken it for granted that Ryan would always come home, even after a fight. Now, the silence was deafening. My friends were no help, most too busy with their own lives, and the ones who called just wanted divorce gossip. I tried dating out of spite. A few disastrous dates later, I gave up. No one was Ryan, and as much as I hated to admit it, I missed him. I missed his laugh at my terrible jokes, his quiet patience when I spent too much. Even the arguments, they meant he cared. One night, fueled by too much wine, I broke my own rule and called him. Straight to voicemail. "I don't know why I'm calling," I said. "I guess I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I didn't treat you the way I should have. I don't blame you for leaving. I hope you're happy." He never called back, and I didn't expect him to. Ryan had moved on, and I needed to figure out how to do the same. 6 months later, Ryan and Emily are still together. From what I hear, they're already talking about moving in. I've stopped stalking their profiles. It only makes things worse. Instead, I got a part-time job at a boutique downtown. It's not much, but it's a start. The house, though, I'll have to sell it soon. The thought of leaving the place where we built our life together is gut-wrenching, but I don't have a choice. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder how things might have been if I'd been different. If I'd appreciated Ryan more. If I'd tried harder. But what-ifs are useless. This is my life now. Alone, broke, and starting over. Ryan, on the other hand, is happy. Truly happy. The irony isn't lost on me. I used to think he couldn't survive without me. Turns out, I'm the one who can't survive without him. Maybe that's the cruelest truth of all.